Knight f3, c5, e3.
A conservative choice and a move sequence very seldom seen. I was hoping to take 9K out of his book while playing solid moves.
Knight c6, c4.
We now head toward a sort of offshoot of an opening known as Queen's Gambit declined.
Knight f6, d4, d5.
This was a very pleasant surprise to me because it should lead to White's domination of the center. A better move was c takes d4, which leads to conventional variations.
C takes d5. Knight takes d5. e4.
With this advance, White seizes control of the center with gain of time.
Knight f6, d5.
This marks the first moment in the match when I could not restrain my aggressive impulses. Although this move is not necessarily bad, it demands very accurate play from White. A simpler way to play was e5, which gives White an advantage in space without any tactical headaches.
Knight takes e4.
Of course, I had reckoned on this possibility when playing my seventh move, but I misjudged my chances. I should pull in my horns now and play Knight c3, Knight takes c3, b takes c3, Knight b8, Knight e5, and White has very good play in return for his pawn investment.
D takes c6. Queen takes d1 check. King takes d1. Knight takes f2 check. King e1. Knight takes h1.
A critical moment in the game. White has some very tempting continuations here. Originally, I had planned bishop b5, b6, c7 check, bishop d7, bishop a6, e6 forced, bishop b7, rook c8, bishop takes c8, bishop takes c8, king f1. The end result will be that Black will lose his knight on h1, but will have three healthy pawns and a solid position to offset his piece deficit. Also worth considering were g3 or g4 to play for bishop g2 and the quick capture of Black's cornered knight. But in that case, Black would boast of 3 pawns and a rook versus 2 pieces, a very favorable material count for the second player. Instead of playing either of these continuations, I went in for a long-winded tactical line that results in a pawn plus ending for Chessmaster 9000.
C takes b7. Bishop takes b7. Bishop e5 check. King d8. Knight e5. Rook g8.
9K starts a brilliant defense. Every move from here to move 20 is now forced. 9K uses the tactical device called the pin to reach a superior ending.
Knight takes f7 check. King c7. King f1. g5.
A very important move. This pawn push removes the possibility of White playing bishop f4 check, and so stifles his development. After this move, I went into a bailout mode, and where I was once playing to win, I was now playing to draw. I could foresee that I would be entering an endgame a pawn down, but I felt that my superior pawn structure might save the day. Still, I was getting that queasy feeling that is associated with unexpected and unpleasant developments.
King g1.
White cannot waste time. I must play to capture the trapped knight.
Bishop G7. Knight C3.
If white grabs the knight with king takes h1, he suffers from back rank problems after rook g f8, bishop c4, rook takes f7, bishop takes f7, rook f8, with the end result being that black will recoup his lost material with interest.
Rook A f8. Bishop c4. Knight f2.
Chessmaster 9000 gives a clinic demonstrating how to exploit a pin for profit.
King takes f2. Rook takes f7 check. Bishop takes f7. Rook f8. Bishop e3.
I did not like the looks of bishop takes g5 because of rook takes f7 check, king g3, bishop e5 check, king h3, rook g7, and suddenly my king is sitting on the hot seat.
Rook takes f7 check. King g1. Rook f5. Rook c1.
In hindsight, I should have played rook f1 at once, although 9k is a strong continuation available in rook e5, rook f7, bishop f6, better than rook takes e3, bishop f2, king d7, rook takes h7, rook f5, because the white rook is way out of position.
Bishop c6. Rook f1. Rook e5. Rook f7. Rook takes e3.
Bishop f6, bishop f2, king d7 is also good.
Rook takes g7. h6. King f2. Rook e6.
Black has an extra pawn and very well placed pieces and king. His only problem is the fractured pawn structure. 9k plays to steadily improve the position of his king and rook, while keeping an eye on stopping white's counterplay. White's knight is totally dominated by black's bishop here, which pretty much kills all thoughts of meaningful counterplay.
g3. King d7. Rook g8. Rook f6 check. King e2. g4.
Suddenly 9k has the strong plan of swinging his rook over to h5 to attack my newly fixed weakness on h2. Of course, I cannot touch the g-pawn. Rook takes g4, bishop f3 check spears my rook.
King e3. Rook f3 check.
9k relentlessly drives my king back to a less active square.
King e2. Rook f5. King e3. Rook h5. Rook takes g4. Rook takes h2.
Chessmaster 9000 has made steady progress, although a win is still far from definite. I'd love to exchange that lame knight for black's active bishop here. If I could achieve that, a draw would be a realistic possibility. I was also interested in the usual defensive goal of exchanging off pawns. I felt that I would well be able to achieve the classic rook versus rook plus bishop endgame, which is usually a draw, although never easy.
b3. Rook h5. Rook c4. Rook e5 check. King d2.
I just gotta sit tight and keep black's pawns under surveillance. Sometimes you really have nothing better to do than sit and wait for your opponent to come up with a plan.
h5. Rook h4. Rook g5. Knight e2. King d6. King e3. a6. King f2. Rook f5 check.
9K maneuvers to limit the activity of my king. King position assumes great importance in the endgame, and the side with the more active king position usually has the advantage.
King e3. Rook f3 check. King d2. Bishop e8. g4.
This is actually a good move, although my follow-up was horrible.
H takes g4. Knight c3.
This blunder effectively ends the game. There is still plenty of fight after rook takes g4, rook f2, rook f4, rook h2, king e3, rook h3 check, king d2, bishop h5, knight c3 forced, bishop g6, rook a4, fighting back, rook d3 check, king e1. Now the point here is that rook takes c3 is met by rook takes a6 check, which wins back the piece and forces a likely draw.
Rook f4.
Chessmaster 9000 now has a decisive two-pawn advantage and is just coasting to victory. I played it out to the bitter end just to see how effective Chessmaster's technique would be.
King e3. King e5. Rook h7. Rook f3 check. King d2. Rook d3 check. King takes d3. Bishop g6 check. King e3. Bishop takes h7.
With the exchange of rooks, there is no possibility of creating any counterplay, and black's pawns will just roll forward and stretch white's defenses to the breaking point.
Knight a4. Bishop b1. Knight takes c5. Bishop takes a2. Knight takes a6. Bishop takes b3. Knight b4. King f5. King f2. e5.
White cannot set up a blockade, and the knight is progressively stretched like a rubber band, trying to hold back the two advancing foot soldiers.
Knight d3. Bishop c4. Knight e1. King e4. King g3. Bishop e6. King f2. Bishop d7. Knight g2. King d3. King g3. King d2.
Wow, this was a real wake-up call. I failed to keep the position under control and paid dearly for it. 9K displayed its usual tactical brilliance, but I contributed to my loss by allowing the position to explode tactically. I had to put this game behind me and get a decent night's sleep to be ready for tomorrow's decisive final games.